Well, how we doing, Life Church? Oh man, what a awesome day this is. This has been fun. The sun came out. Isn't that awesome? Holy cow. And Bob Goff is here? What? And this is crazy. Someone Facebooked me this morning. I guess our church is on the front page of the Saginaw paper, and we didn't even know it. Isn't that nuts? So I guess go buy a paper on the way home. That's crazy. But we're having fun together. Thank you for being here with us. I'm not going to make this a long introduction. Bob Goff is a really cool guy. He'll give you a hug after the service if you want one. And here's the best part. On his Twitter, social media, it gives his bio, and it says, underneath everything else, it says that he is the chief balloon inflator. Isn't that fun? So without further ado, could we give a big warm welcome to Bob Goff?
Oh, yes. Hoppa. Hi, you guys. Oh, man, I'm just so glad to be here. This is like Thanksgiving without the dishes. I'm just so glad we get to hang out. So I'm Bob. I live in San Diego with Sweet Maria. We got 3 kids, Lindsay, Richard, and Adam. 2 of them are married, so I got 2 ponies in the grandpa race. But I got no grandkids. I'm barren. I need to find somebody's birth control pills and change them out for Tic Tacs. They'll have minty fresh breath. I'll have grandkids. I love cake pops. I love it. We're not talking about it, but I just want you to know. I love these things. Figure out, our faith is talking about the things that we love, figuring out what we love, and then doing things about that, knowing who it is that you are and who you want to become. Because I want to be a grandpa. Like literally, I've been practicing all of my grandpa jokes. It's the only one I know. What did 0 say to 8? Nice belt. Let that sink in on you. So, what does that have to do with your faith? Everything. Literally, your faith doesn't have to be complicated. It's just like Jesus just spoke in really plain terms to everybody. I don't care how many boats are on the Sea of Galilee. And I don't care how many these words in Hebrew. It's not that. What I'm trying to do is figure out, how do I love my neighbor as myself? It was always a lawyer like me who tried to set up Jesus, remember? And he said, what's the big command? It was love God with your heart and soul and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And if we figure out that part, that's how we get there. It's like loving him and being real. We spoke in the last hour about keeping it real in our faith. I have a friend who's used to be a mega church pastor down in LA, and about 5 years ago he quit. And he moved to San Francisco, and he lives in a really rough part of town with like 20 felons. And I go up every 6 or 8 weeks just to say hi to these guys. And I brought up some friends with me. And while we were inside, somebody broke into the van, and they broke every single window. And they took everything. They took our luggage, our wallets, our cell phones. I'd written the next book, After Love Does. It was finished. They swiped my laptop, and it was on there, and it wasn't backed up. iCloud, who needs it? It's $1 a year. So it's just gone. Well, I drove this Avis van back to the lot. You know, the guy I pulled in, I'm like, I got it this way. So here was the problem. It was getting on the plane. The TSA guy said, like ticket and ID. And I'm like, dude, I got nothing. Like, it all's gone. And he said, well, who are you? And we're like, I'm Bob, of course. And he said, prove it. Like, how do you prove who you are? And I think that's what Jesus was getting at. It was by loving God with our heart and our soul and our mind, and loving the people around us. This idea we talked about last hour of show, don't tell. And what we do in our faith communities, because we want everybody to know Jesus, we tell people a bunch of information about him. Instead, show love. In Matthew 13, when the people showed love, Jesus asked them, who do people say I am? And people had all kinds of things, a teacher, a prophet. And then Peter says, you're God. And what did Jesus say? Don't tell anyone. Pretty crazy way to start a revolution, huh? Right? But I think he meant this. Show everybody. Don't tell everybody. We don't need, you're just another guy with an opinion. What we want to do is find people who just love it. There's a verse in Galatians 5. It says this: the only thing that matters is your faith expressed in love. Show, don't tell. And if you don't know what to say, just tell them, nice belt. Literally. Find somebody who creeps you out. Say like, nice belt. What if we just start, instead of agreeing with Jesus, like just to actually believe he's going to do these things. In Seattle, there was 20 churches and they all canceled church on Sunday. They said, we're all going to meet in a park. And they asked me if I'd come and speak. And I said, well, I don't know. How many people will be there? And they said, there'll be 5,000 people there. And I said, well, is Jesus coming? They said, he's coming. I'm like, well, I'm in then. And so I got to the airport in San Diego, and no lie, I had a loaf of Wonder Bread and 2 cans of sardines. People are like, did you pack a lunch? I'm like, no, the 5,000 people. Jesus' last time, it was awesome. What if we live in constant anticipation that he's like, he didn't come to just tell us a bunch of stuff, but to show us stuff. Actually do this stuff. I can't think of one time when Jesus got all of his friends together and said, guys, just agree with me. He's like, said, go do stuff, because as you show them love in the smallest way, like Jesus will fill in the blanks. And it wasn't my idea. Like, read the scriptures. That was his idea. I start off every day with a latte. I love these things. And I'm easily entertained. You know, they make little leaves in the top. Have you seen those in the foam? Well, I wrote this Love Does book, and we just gave all the money away. And they sold like 1.5 million of them. So we have schools in Uganda and Somalia and Iraq and all over the place. Pretty much where everybody's shooting at each other, we got a school. We're starting the next school in Congo. And all the genocideers from the genocide in Rwanda went into the Virunga jungle. And I have a friend with a helicopter. We put loudspeakers on the bottom, and we're flying over the jungle, inviting the 70 rebel groups to send all their kids to our school. What could possibly go wrong? But here's the simple message of the gospel. Fail trying. Don't fail watching anymore. Show, don't tell. Right? Just say you're invited. Like everybody. And when people do creepy things, just be like kind. Philippians 2, to consider others more worthy than yourself. Right? Somebody wrote me a mean letter, and I'm a pretty hard guy not to get along with. Are you picking up on that vibe? Like, just whatever. And so somebody wrote a letter to me, and I was like, and I just assume when somebody does something that kind of creepy, I just assume that they're smarter than me. This person like used a bunch of words. I literally had to look it up in a dictionary. Have you ever read one of those letters? You're like, what? And then I just assume that they love God more than me. That's that idea of considering others more worthy than myself. And then here's a third thing. I come up with the least creepiest explanation for whatever just went down. Because it's easy to come up with the most creepiest explanation, but I think Jesus said, if you're going to love me, and if you're going to love the people I made, then just be more generous in the way that you view the stuff that they do. Didn't understand. You know what I assumed this person that wrote the letter? I just figured they were having a bad day. I've had a couple. How about you? The difference, I don't write people letters when I'm having a bad day. I was at this church in Central California. There's 3,000 seats, and there's one empty seat right here. And this woman comes in late. You guys, she has a 7-foot boa around her neck. And I'm like, ah! And I'm like, Bob, get a hold of yourself. I just assumed she was smarter than me. All evidence to the contrary. I assumed that she loved God more than me, because she was certainly going to meet him earlier. And then I said, what's the least creepiest explanation? And you know what I came up with? Maybe she doesn't know. She's going to church. She ducked under a branch. It wrapped around. I'm like, I'm not telling her. What? I think that idea of showing, not telling. I got a call from a sultan. I've never gotten a call from a sultan before. And he asked if I'd come over and build a school in the Middle East for him. I'm like, build your own school. But then he invited me over to his palace in the Middle East. I'm like, yes. So I flew over there. Check out what he made me when I got there. He put his palace on the latte. I'm like, buddy, you are so insecure. And then he took a tablespoon of 14-karat gold and he put it across the top. People, we are paying way too much for gas. He put it across the top. And he said, if you drink the gold, it'll make you look young again. I'm like, liar! But what if we find the people that we don't understand and just give them our very best? Show, don't tell. Give them your best. And sometimes it's just being generous in the way that you view them, coming up with the least creepiest explanation. On the way to all these different schools, I always stop in London. And my favorite thing in London are these double-decker buses. Have you seen those things? You actually should get a couple for the church. Like literally, tell me about the church. They've got double-decker buses. Actually, here, I took a picture of one. Check it out. I was too close. I'm like, this is awesome. And I'm like, shoot. And I think that's what happens in our faith. We get this. We understand the message of Jesus. We say that to love him with our heart and soul and mind and to love our neighbors like ourselves, but we just get so close. And what we need to do is step away from the bus and just look like a fresh view of your faith. What was it? Remember in Revelations 2, you've forgotten your first love. Remember the first time you touched knees with somebody you liked a lot on purpose? You're like, ah! Remember, because now you're a thing, right? You have the DTR, like, so we're a thing. And the thing, it's a verse, it's in Song of Songs. There's this verse. Not that verse, but there's another one. That's an awesome verse, though. I'd have grandkids. It says, my beloved is mine, and I am his. Quit making your faith complicated. Make it simple. Say, I'm yours, you're mine, we're a thing. And so let's just go do stuff. You know what gets in the way for me? I'm comfortable. I'm like the guy in every parable. I'm just the wrong guy in every parable. I'm like the rich young ruler, except I ain't rich and I ain't young. But I'm just distracted constantly by this thing because I'm comfortable. And comfortable people don't need Jesus. Desperate people do. That was Jesus' message to his friends, to get desperate for me. And the more I got a car and a boat and a house. I got all this junk. And I've been trying to move from being comfortable to being engaged, to being more desperate for him. We started our next school in Mogadishu, Somalia. You guys, it's just terrifying. There's 10 million people there. They all got guns. There's no military. There's no police. Al-Shabaab, which is Al-Qaeda's arm, is everywhere. And they will shoot you in the face if they see you. And I was actually walking down the street in Mogadishu on this last trip, and a guy came up to me with a machine gun, and all I had with me was my phone. I asked him, do you know what a selfie is? He didn't shoot me in the face. But what if we get less comfortable? Don't worry about what you're going to do when you get there. Just get there. Find your way to the feet of people who creep you out. And you know what you'll find? You'll find Jesus. You'll see him in yourself because you're more desperate for him. I'm not saying, I'll pray for you guys that you have a safe trip home, but I want you to live risky lives. And it wasn't my ideas. It was Jesus' idea. And he said, loving me means finding people who creep you out. And people that you don't engage, straight Buddhist, Baptist, whoever they are. Find them. I was in Fort Collins speaking at a thing, and they said, would you talk at the Civic Center? I said, what if we fill it up with people who don't go to church? And they said, I got there early. I saw the T-shirts. I'm like, they got the right people. And we had just such a beautiful evening together. And when it was all done, they said, now it's time for question and answer. And I'm like, no, because you never know who's going to ask something. Sure enough, this big religious guy grabs the microphone. He said, I want to know if you'd marry two gay people. I'm like, of course not. I'm already married. But I said, nobody's asked me yet, but this is exactly what I do. I just read scripture. I say, what's the most loving thing I'm allowed to do? That's what I do. I don't know until somebody asks me, but I'll tell you exactly what I'll do. What if that's our go-to? Just find out, not the most loving thing you can think of, because I can think all kinds of stuff. What am I allowed to do? And that's what I'll do. What if you just make your faith just simpler that way? In Mogadishu, they won't teach little girls how to read or write. Do you know why? They're girls. And there's nothing that scares a terrorist more than a girl with a book. And so we started this school. We've got all these little girls. We've got guys with machine guns guarding their hearts. And this whole idea to find beautiful things. And our neighbors are everywhere. And we see them for who they're turning into. I met Sweet Maria. It was probably 35 years ago. She walked in the room. Remember, guys, when you see the girl of your dreams, you're like, yes, you will be mine. And she's been in the room for like 5 minutes, and I'm picking out names for our kids. We're going to make them, and we're going to name them. So she wouldn't go out on a date with me for 3 years. Can I show you what I look like on the day I met Sweet Maria? Check it out. It's like a happy Freddy Krueger, like, hi, can I eat you? But fortunately, she looked through all that hair and acne, and she saw who I was turning into. And here's the deal. We're turning into love. Some of us a little faster than others. But what if you find people who creep you out? The person with this, come up with the least creepy section. Be more generous in the way. They're just a person that God made just different than you. And just because he's working on different stuff in their life than he's working on in your life, doesn't make you right and them wrong. Just love them. But here's the deal. Truth is truth. You don't need to burn down other people's opinions. It doesn't make you right. It makes you an arsonist. Just love people. There's a quiet confidence that comes with just knowing things that Jesus says, and see who he's turning you into. I'm the consul general for the Republic of Uganda. Isn't that awesome? I'm not Uganda's diplomat to the U.S. I'm the Uganda's diplomat here. I'm not the U.S. guy there. So I walk into embassies and they're like, where's the Ugandan guy? I'm like, I'm the Ugandan guy. And if you come to my house in San Diego, the flag of Uganda flies over my house. Isn't that awesome? It looks like Germany got together with a peacock, but that's it. And you know what? My house looks like every single house on the block, but it's not. Because where the consul general lives and the flag of Uganda flies, it's Uganda. Isn't that crazy? I'm the diplomatic mission of a foreign government to the United States. If you guys ever really screw up and need to seek asylum, see on Scott Street. Literally. The WikiLeaks guy's probably having breakfast right now. Let that absorb you. So, and we fly under the banner of Christ. And it changes everything. Or it changes nothing. It can't just change a couple things. But it can change a couple things at a time. You guys thought this was a church service. It's actually an intervention. All your loved ones have been calling me all week long. I need to break the news to you that you need to walk away from here a little different. What's it going to be? I'm such a quirky guy. I've got pants like all of you guys do. And if I want to hang on to something, I put it in my right pocket. But I have no left pockets. I cut them all out, literally. If I put my phone in my left pocket, it'll end up in my shoe. And here's why. Our faith is the sum of everything we're hanging on to and everything we're willing to let go of. And it's only 18 inches, right? Okay, 20. But it's moving it from here to here. It's that easy. What are you hanging on to? Stuff that's getting in your way of Jesus. You're flying under the banner of Jesus like it changes everything. But you gotta let go of some stuff. Somebody break your heart. You screw up in a relationship, you mess up a career, move it from here. Stop carrying it. Like, move it from here to here. I've taken cabs home so many days. I put my car keys over here. They're just gone. Like, wait, I don't even notice. Same thing with your stuff. Jesus just wants us to move stuff here to here. You know why? So we can love him. So we can love the people around us. So we come up with the least creepiest explanations for stuff. Guys, there's scissors in the back. Be careful. But like, just went to church. A great sermon and a vasectomy. You guys, love your neighbors. I've got a neighbor. You guys have one? My neighbor's Carol. She's lived across the street from us for 22 years. Do you know why I know how long she's been there? I used to live there. And 22 and a half years ago, Sweet Maria said she wanted to move. I said, well, can I come? That's the only rule in our marriage. If you ever leave me, you have to take me with you. She said I could come. I'm like, yes. So I bought the house across the street. I was just too cheap to get a moving van. And so there's all these people who wanted to buy our house, but Carol came, and she was a widow at the time. She's in her 50s, and I gave her a hug. I'm like, you're our neighbor. And for the last 22 years, we've just been doing life together. We have a parade on our block. We don't think this idea of loving our neighbor is a metaphor for something else. We actually think it means to love our neighbor. Carol was one of the queens. When she goes to the grocery store, people bow to her. They call her Your Majesty. It takes her a half an hour just to get some gas in the car because everybody's stopping her and calling her. That's the idea of loving her, just to honor them, to consider them more worthy than yourself. About a year and a half ago, I got a call from Carol, and she said, I just got back from the doctor, and I got some bad news. I have cancer. And so I ran to Radio Shack, and I got us 2 walkie-talkies, and I set up one in her bedroom, and I set up one in ours. And we've been talking on the walkie-talkies this whole time. I called her the first time. I said, hello, Carol. You have to make the sound. She said, Bob, is that you? I'm like, who else would it be? And you know, these walkie-talkies didn't fix her cancer, but she wasn't afraid anymore. People of God, that's what we do. It's not a false sense of bravado. It's just like, that's what throughout Scripture, God was always telling his friends. He said it to Joshua, you're taking over for Moses. And Joshua was like, I can't do that. He said, Joshua, be not afraid. He said it to Abram before this big battle, I'm your shield and your great reward. Be not afraid. Jesus said it to 4 dudes in a rowboat. He walked out on the water. He said, it is I. Be not afraid. I think that's what we do. That's how we love our neighbor. And the crazy part, if you're not afraid, then she won't be afraid. He won't spread like a cold. Just love people. Well, Carol took a turn, and she ended up in the hospital. And I got there just as the doctor was walking out. And he said, Carol, you're going to die. And so we sat on the bed and had a good cry together. And we brought her home across the street from us. And I said, Carol, what's something you've always wanted to do that you just haven't had a chance to do yet? And she said, you know what, Bob? I've never toilet papered anyone's house before. So we did. She called me at 4 p.m. She's like, let's go. I'm like, girl, you usually go at midnight, but whatever. And so we went across the street and we started throwing the toilet paper over the neighbor's yard. And you know, like, the cops came. They said, this is a misdemeanor. I'm like, buddy, I have diplomatic immunity and she's dead in a week. Sue me. Love your neighbor. Oh, you guys, and when we get that right, we get everything right. It's crazy how that works. Well, we had the New Year's Day parade this year, and Carol was just too weak to make it out. So we picked her up, we put her in the front window of her home. And what she didn't realize is I changed the parade route. And all 800 of us walked right through her front yard. And the kids put their noses up against the window, and Carol sat in her chair and blew kisses goodbye to everyone. And that day, she went to be with Jesus. You guys, love your neighbor. And the way that we do that is it's not in these big, huge ways. It's in the simple ways. So when people have messed up, I teach at Pepperdine Law School. Can you imagine me teaching at a law school? I'm like, everybody passes the bar. Happy guy. I'm like a happy meal. But I teach a class on failure. And all I do every week is I bring one of my friends who screwed up in front of Earth. There's this friend of mine, he made the most viral video in the history of the internet. 140 million downloads in the first 3 days. And he called me up on the morning of the 4th day and asked if I'd come over. And we're sitting in his kitchen pounding waffles together. And all of a sudden it got really weird. And he ripped off all of his clothes. And I'm holding on to him. I'm like, buddy, we need to keep this party inside. And he got away from me. He ran out on the corner and melted down in front of 100 million people on YouTube. The movie was Coney 2012. And it was written by Invisible Children. And my friend he just melted down. And so I had him come and speak to the class. I said, keep your clothes on, but tell us about this idea of grace and this idea of that's who you were and who it is that God's turning you into. If we start getting that part right, we get everything right. If you're a professor at Pepperdine, you have to have office hours. But get this, they don't say where. So every Wednesday from 10 to 2, I have mine at Tom Sawyer Island at Disneyland. I'm not kidding. It's right on the way. And so I stop there. Literally, I tell the students, if you got a question at $95, give me a call. So, and I bring everybody there. A Chief Justice of Uganda's Supreme Court flew into LAX, and I picked him up. And he said, can we go to your office? I'm like, sure. And so we passed all the high rises in Wilshire Boulevard and we pulled into Disneyland's parking lot. He's like, you have an office here? I'm like, you should see my pirate ship. Did I bring a picture of him? Oh, the Chief Justice. I took him on the Pirates or the Jungle Cruise because I wanted him to know what Africa's really like. And then we went to the castle. I love this thing. Do you know that when they were building Disneyland, Walt Disney showed up unannounced? And they had the roof of the castle off. And you know what? They put it on in a big hurry, and they put it on backwards. And you know what Walt Disney said? I like it better that way. You guys, that's that idea. That's what we do. When you love God and you love your neighbor, you're just more gracious about it. Do you know the reason I know it's on backwards? On eBay, the plans for the Magic Castle came up for sale. I bid my wife's car. I've got these things, literally. She takes the bus now. And if you want to build a castle, just go get a bunch of plywood and pixie dust and a bunch of cash, and you got one of those. But what Jesus talked to his friends about is how to build a kingdom. And there's a big difference between building a castle and building a kingdom, because castles have moats to keep creepy people out. And kingdoms have bridges to let everybody in. Castles have dungeons for people who've screwed up, and kingdoms have grace. And you know what else castles have? Trolls. You've met a couple. And if you want to know where you're at in your faith, kind of a report card on your faith, see how you're treating the trolls in your life. This idea of loving your neighbor isn't who wouldn't love you guys? You're low-hanging fruit. I don't want to take you home in the overhead. But find the people who give you the creeps a little bit and love you. People grow where they're accepted, not where they're informed. And we don't need any more information. We got all the information. We just need to decide that we're just going to love people the way that Jesus did. People that creep us out, people that think differently than us, people that are just flat wrong. Just love them. Like, get over here. Have a hug. Like, there's something, nice belt. Just find the smallest things and let it become big things in their life. I've been to Uganda now 30 times. And the last time I went over in December, I got malaria. I've never taken the meds. I'm like, who needs them? And I got bit. Imagine how small a mosquito is, right? Now imagine how small the beak of a mosquito is. And I evidently got bit. You guys, it almost killed me. I was in the ICU for 2 weeks. I just got the bill before I came here, $180,000. I don't think it's covered. There goes my Prius. But what if we say the same thing that Jesus did in Matthew 13? He talked about the parable of the seed. And he said that the smallest of things, and it's actually not. I'm a lawyer. I looked it up. It's a Peruvian orchid. It's 1/35 millionth of an ounce. That's the smallest seed. But his point in the parable is that the smallest things would become big things, but it's not a parable about the seed. It's so that they would grow into trees so people could find rest. That's it. That's our goal, so people could find rest in us. We don't need a bunch of cops. We don't need a bunch of parole officers. We just need a bunch of people that'll love people. And if you don't know what to say, tell them they got a nice belt. Find a way to deal with the trolls in your life and just love them the way that Jesus did. They have a beautiful tradition at Disneyland. You know what they do? They take people who've been part of building this kingdom and they make them a window. There's a guy named Harper Goff, no relation, but when I go to the ticket window, I'm like, Uncle Harper. And you know what? He was the architect for Disneyland. And at Disneyland, right across from the Jungle Cruise is this window. And here's the question. These people that built the kingdom have windows. What do you want your window to say? At the end of the day, I don't want it to be covered with a bunch of Bible verses. There's nothing wrong with it, but I just say, if you want a Bible verse, read the Bible. It's full of them. I want my life to I want to know Scripture so well that I get this idea to love God with my heart and soul and mind and love my neighbor like myself and start with the ones that creep you out. My life's work has been to build this lodge up in Canada. It's just beautiful. This thing, my nearest neighbor is 10,000 square miles away. We make our own electricity off a glacier on the property. We grow our own food, catch it in the rivers. I mean, we're just off the grid. And we bring people who are mad at each other up there. We've had peace agreements signed between 32 different countries up there. I mean, it's just beautiful. I'm the consul general. I can get anybody a visa, even if they're on the no-fly list. And so we get them up there and we just put Jesus in the middle. And after 22 years, there's 25 rooms in this thing, all hand-drawn, every log. And it was finally done. And I hired 8 guys to go up and put one last coat of stain on it. They were going to be there for 2 months straight. They were there for 2 hours. And they took 2 oily rags and put them together. And they spontaneously combusted and they burn it to the ground. That just happened. And there's something about the power of small things to become beautiful things in people's lives and also become disaster. The small stuff, and you'll know what it is. You don't need a Bible study. You know what you're up to. Stop it. Like literally, just stop. Full stop. Skid marks. Like just stop. And there's something that happens when Marie and I were standing at the edge of this place, seeing every memory we've ever had as a family is just gone. And there was a woman that walked up to us, and I think she was still working on her people skills a little bit. And she said, the reason God did this, Bob, he wanted to show you his power. I wanted to scissor kick her in the neck. I'm like, what? What? I've seen a ladybug and been wowed. You didn't need to burn down my home. But I think the reason that God allows things to happen in your life and in mine is he wants to show us his presence. Emmanuel, God with us. And in a family this big, I mean, some of you guys are going through tough stuff right now. It's financial, it's relationships, it's uncertainty, and you feel like some of the stuff you wanted the most has just been burned down. And I think just God's message to us is that he's with us. That he's with us, we're with him. We're a thing. And you don't need any advice, especially if it rhymes. If you get advice that rhymes, run. But just know that God is with you. It's that simple and that hard. I took this, it was really sad for me, but it really was devastating for sweet Maria. She just really took this thing on the chin. And so we went to a counselor that we trusted a lot, and she was with this woman in the room, and she was asked, what was the hardest part about seeing the lodge burn down? And Maria said it was the only place in the world that I felt safe. And it struck the counselor such an odd response. They dug a little deeper, and you guys, we were so not talking about the lodge anymore. We were talking about a guy 40 years ago who's long since dead, but I'd be tempted to dig him up and kill him again. There's just these things that happen in our lives. They cause these other things that we've been holding back, like we've just had them in our right pocket. We've been hanging on to it without knowing it, to bubble up. And I told Maria, if it took our lodge burning down to get real with that stuff, I would have lit the match myself. This whole idea that God's with us and we're with each other, and God isn't afraid of your questions. He's not afraid of your pain. Pain is pain. I mean, you've had stuff burned down too in your life. It's been a dream. And what God's here to say is that if you're with him and he's with you, then it doesn't make that we don't go around the pain, but he's with us in it. And I thought I had a really bad deal until I watched The Revenant. He got eaten by a bear. He had to sleep in a horse. I'm like, we're good. One of the things that happens, this whole idea of being with us, is that we don't stay stuck. Sad, yes. Stuck, no. There's a city in southern Texas. It's called Lake Jackson. And the thing I like about Lake Jackson is kind of like Walt Disney, the guy that started the city let his kids pick the names for all the streets. And do you know what they named every single street? Way. There's a street called This Way, and there's a street called That Way. I'm not kidding. There's a street called Anyway. You couldn't make this stuff up. The church is on His Way, and the airport's on Runway. Love God with all your heart and soul and mind, and love your neighbor like yourself. Don't get stuck. Do I do this? Do I do that? Don't talk about God's plan like He's got it folded up in His back pocket. You know, the only thing He's got in His back pocket is a wallet with your picture in it. That's it. He's nuts of it. You're His. He's yours. It's that simple. Don't get stuck. The stuff that you're feeling like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And Jesus just says, yeah, I know. Oh, our gosh. I'm with you in that. Let's not get stuck. Let's just take the next step. And the next step is towards Him. He doesn't need your big plans. Some plans work, some plans don't. But moving towards Jesus just works. I got to land the plane. Sweet Maria won't fly with me for all the reasons you guys wouldn't. I'm like that dogging up. I'm like, squirrel. So I've got this old Beaver seaplane, and that's how we get in and out of Malibu. You land on the water and take off. And every year on our anniversary, we go for one trip. And we'll fly up to a lake somewhere and have a soda pop and like, let's do this again. Well, we flew back to the lodge and we stopped at the dock, and Maria got out of the plane and she left this note behind. And it said, meet me at the cabin. I'm like, yes. So I'm running to the cabin. I'm like, this is going to be awesome. And you know what she'd done, you guys? She'd saved her wedding dress for 30 years. And she still fitted. She got this jumbo tuxedo and duct taped me in. And we renewed our vows. And you guys, I'm emotionally incontinent, which is really a problem if you're a trial lawyer. But all I could get out was this: my beloved, I am yours and you are mine. Jesus isn't wowed by our big speeches. He's wowed by humble hearts. People that just say, I know, I'm not stuck. I'm confused, but I ain't stuck. There's one thing that we have in British Columbia that you guys don't have a lot of right here in Michigan, and it's sea otters. We got thousands of these things. And do you know the things about sea otters? They all hold hands. Do you know what? We should be playing Sarah McLachlan music. Don't you want to just adopt a puppy or something? You know why they all hold hands? Because they don't want anyone to drift away. People of God, it's that simple. Just don't let anybody drift away, including you. Like that idea, you're His, He's yours. So just as you leave here, just walk into the week in confidence that you're a thing. And He just delights when we try stuff. And some of them will work and some of them won't, but fail trying. Don't fail watching anymore. Could you grab a hand or a shoulder, whatever's not creepy? You'll know immediately. Oh, you guys. So here we are. Oh, can I pray for us? Let's leave our eyes open, though. Could we? We get to spend eternity together. I want you to know what I look like. Anybody seen Bob? Anybody? Jesus, be with each man in this room. Make him strong. Make him courageous. Make him just like you. And be with each woman in this room. Make them strong. Make them courageous. Don't make them afraid of nothing. You're ours. We're yours. We want to build a kingdom, not a bunch of castles. In your strong name, amen.